This is extraordinary. A few days ago, an Irish professor who's been all over the media for months, creating, to be quite honest, panic, had a Zoom call with school children. Here it is.
We may wear masks every winter, remember, you never know, because it's not that difficult, not in schools, but in shops and so on, like you see in China, for instance,
Like you see in China? Only a few months ago, we were talking about 2 to 3 weeks to flatten the curve, protect the hospitals. How do we become China in a few months? Remember, in Ireland, we had an epidemic peak way back in April. But the reality is 95% of those who passed were too aged or ill to even be given ICU, independent of COVID. If you look at the other 5%, there was less than 1 person per million per day died at the peak of the epidemic, and it's been flatlined for this group since. Lockdown wasn't the reason, because we have 22 papers now indicating that lockdown does not change the mortality needle. And Ireland didn't have any excess mortality in the first 6 months of the year than prior years, even with the epidemic.
And so I think it's going to be what we call vaccines plus. And that means keep doing what you're doing and vaccinate, certainly for 6 months.
What? I showed you the figures for Ireland. So we're going to keep doing lockdowns, distancing and masks on top of vaccines? What happened flattening the curve for a few weeks to protect the hospitals? The epidemic is long over now. What happened?
So everybody should get vaccinated. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it to protect the vulnerable people in our society and the healthcare workers.
Medicate millions of children, but we showed you that the epidemic did not cause any increase in all-cause mortality. And lockdown did not keep this where it was. That's just a reality. Now wait till you hear what the professor tells these children next.
I mean, what they're discussing at the moment is the passport ID. You might have a thing on your iPhone, it says I've been vaccinated. You might have a wristband that you can't get off. So there may be wristbands that can't come off. That's one thing. Now that could be people that, I'm not on my wrist. There'll be civil liberty questions there. People that, I'm not on my wrist. There'll be civil liberty questions there.
Non-removable bracelets. Making a joke out of civil liberties. How do we get here from flattening the curve? And remember, there was no impact on all-cause mortality in Ireland from the actual epidemic itself. But now we're here? Non-removable bracelets.
And I bet you'll take a vaccine to get to your debs, probably, so that's the intent. There you have it.
Coercion to take medications so you can go to your prom. How do we get here from flatten the curve? Especially when we know now that the death rates per million outside of people who are extremely aged or ill were actually quite tiny. So there you have it. Going into the schools with this kind of stuff. Don't know how it's even legal. But I leave it to you to decide. And I'll just leave you with final clip of a tweet that this guy sent out the other day. So it'll kind of show you where his mind is.